You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we may very well have another defamation case on our hands for Fox News or a Fox News guest. So I'm going to play a clip from a woman named Monica Page. She is the White House correspondent for Turning Point USA. That's Charlie Kirk's organization. I think they deal mostly with colleges. But she went on Fox News and said this.
And if you're going to vote no on this, then you're voting along with Democrats, especially Democrats like Maxine Dexter, who was on the Hill today dressed in a white robe, who also visited El Salvador to go see Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who killed Americans. This is something that a lot of people are passionate about passing. If you're not siding with Republicans, then unfortunately you're siding with Democrats, anti-American.
So that was Ms. Page asserting that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, quote, killed Americans. And this was an assertion that was completely baseless. There's zero evidence whatsoever to make this claim. So first and foremost, is this defamatory, and at the hands of who? Would it be Fox News that would bear the brunt of this defamation, or would it be the guest, Monica Page?
You know, Brian, you're right. There is absolutely no evidence in the public record that we've ever heard that Abrego Garcia has killed Americans, plural. And here's the thing. There's going to be a really strong inference that this is false, because I have to believe in all of the public statements that Trump administration officials, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, have made about Abrego Garcia. They've called him every name in the book. They've said horrible things. Notably, they've said things that didn't even make it into that Mickey Mouse indictment they brought against him down in Tennessee. And you would think if he did horrible things, they would have been in the indictment. So there's a strong inference that this is defamatory. This is false. And, you know, I would be surprised if this reporter, air quotes there, could come up with some kind of sources that, oh, no, I was acting in good faith when I said it. I had a reasonable belief in the truthfulness of what I was asserting. So, you know, first of all, is it defamation? Assuming it's false, and it sure seems to be, the answer is yes. Then the question becomes, the first question, how would Abrego Garcia go about proving defamation? Because there's an important issue. Anytime somebody is defamed, somebody is lied about, and it hurts their reputation, it hurts their financial standing, and there's a third reason that this might hurt Abrego Garcia, which I'll talk about in a second. The first issue to be addressed is the person who is defamed, who is lied about, a public figure or a private figure? Now, this one is not necessarily intuitive, because people may say, wait a minute, I've heard a lot about Abrego Garcia. Of course he's a public figure, but he's really not. And here's why he's not, and here's why it matters. It's a far lesser burden of proof if somebody lies about you and defames you and you're a private figure, not a public figure. So there's a lot riding on that distinction. So a public figure is somebody who is, you know, a politician, somebody who holds elected office, or a famous Hollywood person, or a particularly well-known, you know, businessman, somebody who, you know, wants to be known publicly. Now, Abrego Garcia is known publicly. His name is certainly known, but it's what we would call reactive notoriety. Why do we know Abrego Garcia? Well, because Donald Trump violated his constitutional rights, and Donald Trump and his administration then violated court orders by refusing to facilitate the release and return of Abrego Garcia. That's why he has notoriety, but it's not the kind of notoriety that would make him a public figure. I am confident that if push came to shove and a judge had to decide whether he was a public figure or a private figure, because this is reactive notoriety, he didn't crave this spotlight. He didn't want to be famous for any of this. The judge would probably determine that he was a private person. And what that means is this reporter, this woman who told what appear to be lies about Abrego Garcia and his lawyers would only have to prove that she was negligent, rather than, if he was a public figure, that she told those lies with actual malice, knowing them to be false, or recklessly disregarding the truth or falsity of what she was saying. So that kind of sets the table for the next question. Well, who might be the defendant in a defamation case brought by Abrego Garcia? Well, it would certainly be the woman who spoke these defamatory words. And, you know, it could be Fox, but I think that might be an uphill climb unless this reporter or this contributor, this correspondent, was in the habit of appearing on Fox, and Fox knew that she was prone to making false statements, potentially defamatory statements, and maybe they gave her airtime and an opportunity to do so repeatedly. Then you're getting into the kind of negligence or the kind of recklessness by the Fox organization that could put them on the hook as well in a defamation suit. But as I say, that's probably an uphill climb.
Now, she did post an apology online. I'm going to put it on the screen right here and also read it. Tonight, during an interview on Fox News, I inadvertently said that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, quote, killed Americans. What I meant to say was that he has been connected with gang activity that has devastated the lives of many people and killed an untold number of Americans. He has not been personally linked to the death of anyone, even while being accused of gang activity, including human trafficking, drug trafficking, and spousal abuse. I misspoke, and I apologize for the mistake. Now, what does that do in terms of mitigating risk?
Retractions and apologies matter. I will say one of the first informal steps that a potential plaintiff, somebody who is considering suing for defamation, often takes is demanding a retraction and an apology. Now, that doesn't render somebody immune, because think about it. If you could lie and lie and lie about somebody,
and then just apologize after the fact, yeah,
right, and that would mean you could never be sued. That's just not the way civil litigation works. But it will go a long way, I think, in tamping down perhaps Abrego Garcia's appetite or the appetite of his legal team to pursue defamation charges. So it matters. It helps mitigate the damage because here's the other thing. People misspeak all the time in public, on TV, and elsewhere. And, you know, there are innocent mistakes made. But, you know, it's not all that innocent when you tell the viewing public on the Fox network, Abrego Garcia has killed Americans. Because here is the other thing that's at play for somebody like Abrego Garcia when there's that kind of dramatic lie told about him. Not only might that hurt his reputation, not only might that hurt his financial standing moving forward, he's also looking to get a fair trial by an untainted jury pool in the event he goes to trial in his criminal case in Tennessee. So it sure doesn't help his ability to seat fair and impartial jurors who can judge his case fairly to have Fox News broadcast something that this woman said about him having killed Americans. So, you know, that's the kind of evidence, quite frankly, that would never be admitted at trial against him. But that's a different question from whether it permeates the public consciousness such that it might impact his ability to be tried by fair and impartial jurors.
Well, to that point, Glenn, it's worth asking this question. Kilmar Abrego Garcia right now is mired in two cases where he's literally just fighting for his life, fighting for his ability to be able to stay here. One of these cases is in Tennessee on these completely trumped up, bogus charges of human smuggling that's going to get laughed out of the courtroom even more than it has already. And the other is taking place in Maryland, where the federal government is trying to deport the guy. And remember, they just had to bring him back from a maximum security gulag in El Salvador. And so is he in a position where he could even have the opportunity to wage some defamation lawsuit when we don't even know if this guy is going to be able to remain in the United States of America more than 5 minutes from now?
You know, he could certainly have his legal team, and I assume he will consult with his legal team and perhaps discuss whether a defamation suit should be brought. I mean, it is about as dramatic a lie as you can tell about somebody, and we all know how, you know, the Fox News audience eats this kind of stuff up. So it will permeate. And he can. The answer is he can bring a defamation lawsuit, even though he is, as you say, mired in defending himself in a criminal case in Tennessee, defending himself against potential deportation actions by the federal government. Because, you know, in civil suits, the parties, the plaintiff, the respondent, or defendant, doesn't even have to appear. I mean, they don't have to sit through a trial, for example. You know, all of this is done by the lawyers, and all the pretrial discovery, the depositions, the interrogatories are done by lawyers. So in theory, he could do it even if he remains detained pending trial in Tennessee, which is an open question right now. So he could do it. Will he do it? You know, it's hard to see how this is what he wants to occupy his time with when he is defending not only his innocence in this apparently trumped-up case down in Tennessee, but his right to remain here. Remember, he was here for years. He was on release in the community when Trump's goons snatched him up, stuffed him on a plane, and sent him to a prison in El Salvador, one, in violation of his due process rights, and two, in violation of a court order entered in 2019 against the Trump administration saying he may not be deported to El Salvador. So, yeah, Abrego Garcia has got a heck of a lot on his plate.
Are any court orders enforceable if you are no longer in the United States? Let's say he does get deported. Maybe it's not to El Salvador. Maybe it's to some South or Central American country. Is he able to benefit from the full breadth of the U.S. legal system if he's no longer even in the United States?
I don't want to pretend I have a definitive answer to that, Brian, but my sense is a litigant who has filed a lawsuit appropriately, in other words, he has a viable case to make, the court has jurisdiction to hear the civil suit that he's filed, who then is no longer in the country, but his lawyers as his representatives continue to pursue the case. And as we just discussed, he doesn't even have to be present during a civil trial. Yeah. It seems to me, my sense, but please don't take this to the bank, is that, yes, the suit could continue even if he had been removed from this country. He could assign somebody, he could give power of attorney, perhaps his heirs, his relatives. Yeah, they could end up being, the benefactors of the ruling.
Glenn, it's worth zooming out a little bit to a 30,000-foot view here. What does it say that Fox is spending its airtime, whether it's on claims that are completely defamatory, completely made up, completely baseless, but spending so much time vilifying this one person because of what he represents? Because we know that there's very little basis to be able to attack Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The federal government itself admitted that he was sent to El Salvador in error. We know that the Trump administration has released people from prison who they thought could give them incriminating information on Garcia. So they released people who were actually a threat to the community so that they could take down somebody who there's no evidence was a threat to the community. But they've spent so much airtime, so they have expended so much capital destroying this guy's life because of what he represents. He represents a threat to Trump's supremacy, to his ability to be able to do whatever he wants on immigration completely unchecked. And so he's more of a symbol at this point than an actual man. And so what does it say that you have people who are just going out on such a limb to destroy this guy's life, all because of what he represents, that he represents some obstacle to Donald Trump's total power?
Two things come to mind, Brian. One, it seems that the Fox network is inclined to continue to sing from the Donald Trump hymnal book, and Donald Trump is forever trying to demonize the other and drive wedges and instill fear in both the immigrant population and fear in everybody else, believing that they're at risk from the immigrant population. That's one thing that, for whatever reason, the Fox network continues to want to push as a Donald Trump narrative and priority. And the other thing is, I guess nobody can accuse Fox of learning from its mistakes, because
right.
They had to pay out $750 million to settle a defamation suit brought by Dominion Voting Systems, where what they were lying about was our presidential election. And talk about lying about that to the extreme detriment of the American people, the right of the voters, and our democracy. So, you know what? Nobody can accuse Fox of learning its lesson.
And that's the point I want to end on, and with this final question, and that is, I understand that when you come into a courtroom, you're given the presumption of innocence. Is there a degree to which a judge can look at the way that Fox has comported itself in the past, where they lie so frequently, so freely, that they had to pay $787 billion for the last set of lies they got called out on, and that presumption of innocence, or at least the presumption of regularity, goes away, or has some atmospheric impact on a judge, because we have seen that this is a network that's so easily, casually traffics in overt lies? How does that play into the potential for another defamation lawsuit in this instance?
Yeah, it's a good question. But first of all, the presumption of innocence applies at a criminal trial, not in civil cases, not in lawsuits, defamation cases. But the question still stands, because if somebody or some organization has been involved in defamatory conduct over and over again, you would think that might be relevant to yet another defamation claim. But I will say the rules of evidence, whether in criminal cases or in civil lawsuits, are pretty stingy about allowing that kind of evidence in unless there's a specific sort of pigeonhole into which you can put that kind of evidence to make it not only relevant, but make it non-prejudicial. Because, you know, there is a prevailing wisdom, and this is embodied in rules of criminal procedure and civil procedure, that uncharged acts, in other words, acts that weren't committed as part of the case that is before the jury, other acts in other circumstances, even in other cases, generally speaking, are not admissible, because you want a jury, whether criminal or civil, to decide the case, whether somebody was defamed or not, based almost exclusively on the evidence that's presented at trial. And sometimes that evidence can include other acts of misconduct by the defendant or the respondent. You have to overcome a pretty high evidentiary hurdle in order to get that kind of evidence before a jury. And because this was a guest, now, as we discussed before, if this is a guest who was on all the time and was frequently, caught telling lies, that would reflect poorly on Fox. But if you don't have that kind of evidence, this case would probably be decided just on the four corners of what she said, whether it was defamatory or not, and what damages Abrego Garcia may have suffered as a result.
Got it. Okay, well, I appreciate all of the valuable information here, and of course, we'll see what happens next on this front. For those who are watching, if you'd like to follow along or stay involved in any other legal news that breaks, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. That's the best way to support our work. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, and it's also a great way to support independent media more broadly. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.